It started the way it always does. With a look, a judgment, and a phone call. James Whitmore was a 53-year-old retired contractor who prided himself on being aware. Aware of what he called suspicious behavior, though if you listen closely, it always seemed to boil down to one thing: someone who didn't look like they belonged. That morning, the sun had barely crested over the trees in Fairview Memorial Park. James was finishing his second cup of coffee when he spotted a young black man on a bench near the war memorial. Hood up, notebook out, glancing around, writing, staring, writing again. That was all it took. James reached for his phone. Malik Hayes wasn't paying attention to James. He was lost in thought, writing out a letter to someone he hadn't spoken to in nearly 2 years. His mother. Not because he didn't love her, but because he couldn't tell her the truth. Because if she ever knew what he was involved in, she'd worry herself to death. So instead, he wrote what he could say. The memories. The lessons. The nights when he remembered her voice humming through the walls like a soft hymn. And as he wrote, a shadow crossed the page. 2 officers approached, hands on holsters. One called out, "Excuse me, sir, can we talk to you for a moment?" Malik didn't flinch. He gave them his ID, explained he was just writing in the park, showed them the notebook. They didn't see anything threatening, but they didn't like his calm, didn't like how little he panicked, didn't like that his ID said DC, not Georgia. But before they could dig deeper, a voice crackled over the radio. "Unit 9, stand down. Federal personnel en route. Repeat, federal personnel en route." The officers froze. And just like that, the black SUV pulled up to the curb. Special Agent Marla Voss stepped out. Composed, eyes sharp, authority in every stride. She flashed her badge. The officers barely spoke before backing off. She turned to Malik. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, because things just got louder. She opened the door. He stepped in, and they disappeared. No cuffs, no raised voices, just a ghost slipping through the daylight. James stood stunned. From his porch, he had watched everything unfold. And yet he understood none of it. Who was that kid? Why did the FBI come? Why did the officers back down like scared rookies? He had made dozens of calls before. Some led nowhere. A few ended in arrests. But this one felt different. And deep inside, James knew he'd done something wrong. But he didn't know just how wrong. Malik wasn't just some kid in a hoodie. He was a federal asset. A civilian informant embedded inside Ravix Solutions, a rapidly growing tech contractor that had secured nearly $40 million in public safety innovation grants. But their technology wasn't about safety. It was about control. And Malik had uncovered something explosive. It started with a summer internship meant to promote tech equity by bringing more black students into the field. Ravix wanted the PR. They didn't expect someone like Malik, a coder who not only understood the language of data, but questioned it, who asked why predictive algorithms seemed to flag black residents 7x more often than white ones for potential threat indicators, who discovered internal logs showing they were testing real-time surveillance tools in low-income neighborhoods without community consent, who found the pilot name, Project Lantern, a project designed to preemptively assess public safety risk in urban zones using real-time behavioral analysis and criminal probability scoring. Translation? They were building tech to profile entire neighborhoods and justify it with math. Malik was supposed to stay 6 months. He stayed 1.5 years. He gathered logs, recorded boardroom meetings, captured emails between Ravix executives and municipal leaders looking to quietly pilot the program. He documented the silent expansion into school districts, into police vehicles, into camera systems mounted to street lamps, all in the name of safety. But the code was rotten, and it was targeting people who looked just like him. That morning in the park, he was finishing his whistleblower dossier. It was set to go to the House Oversight Committee, to the ACLU, to 3 national journalists who had been circling the story for weeks, waiting for confirmation. He was ready, but he hadn't expected the call. The cop call. He hadn't expected James. When the story broke days later, it hit like lightning. Whistleblower reveals predictive policing program targeting Black communities. FBI confirms ongoing investigation into Ravix solutions. Young hacker or national hero? Cable news argued for days. Politicians scrambled. Civil rights groups organized emergency summits. But inside Fairview, the town began to unravel. People wanted answers, but they also wanted someone to blame. James watched it all. For the first time in years, he felt shame. He had judged someone for sitting in a park, and that someone had nearly brought down a multi-million-dollar surveillance operation that had quietly turned his neighborhood into a test site. He had made the wrong call. And now, every time he looked in the mirror, he saw it. Meanwhile, Malik was moved. New safe house. New number. New alias. His real name had become both shield and target. But what haunted him wasn't the exposure. It was something he hadn't shared. Something he hadn't put in the dossier. A document buried deeper than the others. One labeled, Project Ashes, Rev 2.1, confirmed live trial. And underneath the title, a single line of text. Status, active. Fairview, Georgia targets acquired. He hadn't told the FBI about that file. Not yet. He needed to be sure. He needed to see it with his own eyes. Because if what he suspected was true, then Project Lantern was just the surface. And what lived beneath it was something far more dangerous. Back in Fairview, Agent Marla Voss parked quietly outside an unmarked building. The Ravix Research Annex James didn't even know existed. She wasn't here to debrief. She was here to confirm. A hard drive Malik had slipped her, containing encrypted project folders he hadn't dared upload over the internet. She inserted it. One folder unlocked. The file name made her blood run cold. Aegis Protocol, Predictive Detainment. Schedule initiated. She reached for her phone. But before she could call headquarters, the screen went dark. Her vehicle, engine dead, systems offline. And just outside, a figure stepped into the glow of the parking lights. Meanwhile, James stood in his driveway as a letter arrived with no return address. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside, a flash drive. And a single sentence written on a folded piece of paper. This is what I was trying to stop. He looked up. And in that moment he realized. This wasn't over. Not even close. It should have been over. The headlines were written. The whistle blown. The world had seen the smoke. But what Malik Hayes had uncovered wasn't just fire. It was something still burning. And the closer he got, the more he realized the real story hadn't even started yet. 2 weeks after the exposure of Project Lantern, Fairview was on edge. People watched cameras on street lamps like vultures. Teachers second-guessed every login. Even the mayor disappeared from public briefings. But beneath the surface, something darker stirred. Because Project Lantern wasn't the full machine. It was the outer shell. And buried beneath it was something called Project Ashes. Malik had kept that final file to himself for one reason. Project Ashes wasn't predictive. It was active. While Lantern profiled behavior, Ashes deployed preemptive action on civilians flagged by the algorithm. False flags, children, elders, families, disappeared quietly under the label of protective custody or preventative relocation. No charges, no records, just silence. And Malik had found proof that Fairview was the live testing ground. He met Agent Marla Voss again, this time in a decommissioned train yard, off-grid, no cameras, no drones. She looked older already, eyes harder, voice lower. I tried to warn DC, she said. They told me to let it go. Why? Because Ashes isn't just Ravix. It's federal. Malik froze. The Department of Homeland Security authorized pilot funding in 2022. With quiet partnerships, private firms, state prisons, juvenile detention contractors. Malik whispered, so we built the fire, then hired people to sell the hose. Marla looked away. It gets worse. Inside her trunk was a body cam. But it didn't belong to a cop. It was taken from the wreckage of an unmarked vehicle that had followed her the night her car was shut down. The footage showed armed men in black gear. No patches, no badges, no jurisdiction, escorting civilians into a decommissioned school west of town. A school officially listed as condemned. But inside, rows of makeshift cells. And something else. A whiteboard, labeled Behavioral Anomaly Intervention Schedule. That night, Malik made a decision. No more middlemen. No more waiting on agencies. He would break the story himself. He would show the world what Ashes really was, even if it cost him everything. But while Malik moved in the shadows, James Whitmore sat in the light of his guilt. The flash drive Malik had mailed him replayed video after video, files from inside Ravix, from school surveillance, from trial runs. He saw students dragged out of classes for random scans. He saw heat maps that turned black and brown neighborhoods red with algorithmic fear. And he saw one file that made him cry. Potential threat, Isaiah Whitmore. Age 12. Behavior score 7.3. Monitoring recommended. His own grandson. His own blood. James knew he had made a mistake calling the police on Malik. But now, he realized he had been living inside the lie. He hadn't been protecting his neighborhood. He'd been helping cage it. At dawn, Malik and Marla moved. They tracked the coordinates from the footage. Abandoned school. Chain link fence. Power running underground. Malik cracked the gate. Marla scanned for motion sensors. Inside, silence. Until the lights blinked on by themselves. They moved fast. Hall by hall. Room by room. Cameras were still active, but rerouted, looping footage of an empty building. Marla had learned how to ghost their signal. Then a door. Reinforced steel. Behind it, computers. Servers. Chairs still warm. And in the center, a single terminal blinking. Welcome, Malik Hayes. He stepped closer. The system had recognized him. A retinal scan confirmed it. Project Ashes opened itself to him like a book written in his name. He wasn't the author. Inside were records, dozens of them. Hundreds. Behavioral profiles. Movement data. Conversations lifted from smart speakers. School counseling notes. All funneled into one system. And in the corner of every file? Subject tier. Hayes, Generation 2 asset. Malik's hand trembled. I'm in the system? Marla's voice caught. What does Generation 2 mean? Malik clicked the tab. The truth shattered him. His name, his mother's, his father's. All tied to a 1999 classified program. Ashes Ancestral Heuristic Evaluation System. They hadn't just chosen Malik. He had been bred for it. Ravix hadn't discovered him by accident. He'd been placed. His internship wasn't an outreach. It was a reactivation. His father, a civil rights lawyer, had vanished when Malik was 5. The story was a car accident, but the file said otherwise. Asset Elijah Hayes. Removed, operational interference risk. Malik couldn't breathe. He had spent his life running toward truth, and now, it turned on him. His father hadn't died. He had been silenced. And Malik? He was next. The room's lights shut off. A red flash. Sirens. Lockdown mode initiated. They're here, Marla said. But before she could pull her weapon, the screen flickered one last time. System transfer. Initiated by external node. Receiver, unknown. And in one moment, all data vanished. What? Gone. Malik stood in the dark and whispered, "We're too late." But outside, before they could escape, a voice crackled from a speaker embedded in the trees. "I told you not to look." A man stepped out. Gray coat, steel gray beard. The same man from the footage weeks ago. The one who had shut down Marla's car. "You wanted the truth, Malik," he said. "I'll give it to you." He raised his hand, and behind him, 3 black vans rolled in. No markings. No plates. No noise. Marla raised her gun. He smiled. "You think this ends in a shootout?" He looked at Malik. "No. This ends in understanding." And then, he said Malik's full name. and the name of a father Malik had thought was dead. Elijah Hayes sends his regards. Malik's voice cracked. You're lying. The man nodded slowly. I was there when he disappeared. I'm the reason you're still breathing. Then softer. Come with me. Or the next time you see your father's name, it'll be on a gravestone. Malik's knees buckled. Marla whispered, You don't have to trust him. But Malik wasn't listening. He was staring at the vans. And the symbol freshly painted on their side. A phoenix made of ashes. The logo of a project long buried. And still alive. Final words fade in. He exposed the truth. But he hadn't seen the whole fire. Now he must decide. Burn with it, or rise from it.